Hello and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Claudia Wilson is the founder of Olive Nutrition and the author of the 1-2 Punch. She created the 1-2 Punch to simplify eating, provide education on nutrition, and offer tools to have at your fingertips. She has been guiding individuals on their path to healthy eating for more than 2 decades. Claudia is passionate about helping clients have it all, showing them how to be healthy while still enjoying the foods they love. She is a registered dietitian certified here in the state of Utah. She's a board-certified specialist in sports nutrition and a strength and conditioning specialist, and earned her master's degree right here at the University of Utah. And go Utes! Claudia Wilson, welcome to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We
Thanks,
are
Casey.
so excited to have you. We're excited to do this in person. We do so many remote interviews that it's really nice to be here with you. And since I'm with you, I'm feeling pretty brave. You wrote a book called 1-2 Punch, so I'm feeling like I might get beat up. So if I can leave here without getting punched in the face and knocked out, that would be great.
I mean, you are a trainer, and I exercise a lot, so we could go fisticuffs.
I'm not betting on myself in that fight. So you got your master's degree here at the University of Utah. What was your experience like in Utah?
It was great. My master's focused on sports,
Nice.
Focused on sports nutrition and eating disorders, which really means it focused on the emotional aspects of eating. And I loved sports because I just think sports are so emotional. So I loved my experience. It was great.
That's awesome. That's great. What were your favorite sports growing up?
Growing up, Casey's already calling me out. I'm going to say dance, and I know there's some
Cool.
listeners that might say, oh, dancing isn't a sport. I'm also, full disclosure, a drill teamer.
Nice.
The 2 decades that I've been working, the over 2 decades really just means that I'm old. You can take the girl out of the drill team, but you can't take the drill team out of the girl.
That's great. I love that. That's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and say dance and drill team are definitely sports. I could not do them at all if I tried. And so I'm going to say it's a sport, and that totally counts.
Oh, yay.
Well, we are super excited to talk to you today. A lot of people who listen to our show know that we kind of approach nutrition through low carb, keto, carnivore. I'm a certified carnivore coach. And we really like that method because it's seemed to work for us and for our clients. And so oftentimes I get a little bullheaded and tell people like, oh, just eat this and just eat that and everything will be fine. And I sometimes do a really poor job of considering like what you mentioned, the emotional eating, the eating with a family, the intuitive eating. And as I'm prescribing some of these diets, not prescribing, but I'm giving people ideas on diets, sometimes I miss that. And you take a more balanced approach, which I really love, and you do it in a way that's really gentle and can help people. And I really wanted to bring you on to be able to talk about that because I think that's something that we miss. If I'm just giving people a list of food, that's not nutrition, that's not eating. There's so much more nuance to that. And so I'd love to talk to you today about that.
Yeah. So if only, right? If only it were that simple to say, just do this, just eat this, just behave this way, just eat these foods. But it's not. And the reason that it's not is because we are human beings and human beings have emotion. And for so many people, lots of people, yes, can follow, like you said, a prescribed diet, plan, program, and that's fine. So many other people, given their personalities, can't. It just gets in the way. They can't necessarily. It's not that they can't follow that logically or intellectually. Their emotions and their frame of reference and their background, possibly trauma, triggers, things like that are getting in the way of them being able to, put the blinders on and just follow that. And you and I were talking before we hit record about all the reasons why someone might be eating a particular way and might not be able to just follow, XYZ plan.
Yeah. I love that. We ask a lot of our guests to just come on and tell us exactly what to eat so that we can end the podcast. We can go home. We'll shut the whole thing down. I get the feeling you're also not going to be able to tell us exactly what to eat.
I'm not going to do that. I wish it would, solve the world's problems, but
well, we'll continue to be disappointed, but not necessarily surprised. Why did you get into nutrition to begin with?
So I got into nutrition because I love the human body. More than that, more than loving the human body, I love human behavior, and everyone needs to eat. So I was fascinated about how our body receives nutrition, any kind of nutrition, how our body receives food and processes that food, and how that can be manipulated to improve and kind of peak human potential. That was fascinating to me.
So interesting.
That it can be changed for better or worse based on what we eat. And I just really got into sports nutrition. I love the passion in sports. I just love it. And most athletes are very engaged in, how can I be better?
Right.
What can I do to be better? What can I do to win?
Yep.
What can I do to, get a PR? And so I love the sports. But even more than that, over the years, I'm just fascinated by the why in someone's eating, especially, and we were talking before, especially when they feel like they've gone off the rails. It's not about what they went off the rails with. It's about why. And the why, sure, chocolate chip cookies are tasty, but that's not the why I'm talking about.
Yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And we talked a little bit about that before we started recording. That I have to admit, that's something that I miss way too much when I'm working with my clients, is getting, peeling back the layers of the onion to get to the core and the heart of the issue. And I think that's so wise and important to understand that nutrition's not just a bunch of food and even just a bunch of nutrients. There's so much more nuance and levels to it.
Yeah, I love that you said peeling back the onion, because what typically happens, it's not easy, but easier to talk about food. It's something tangible. It's something logical. It is much harder to talk about our emotions, particularly hard emotions and painful emotions. And most people typically cry when they're chopping onions, peeling onions. And that's what happens. And it's alarming when my clients come to me and, they're coming to see a registered dietitian. I'm much more of a nutrition therapist or a health coach, life coach, than I am just a dietitian. And so they're very surprised when we get into the weeds of the why and the tears start, because I've touched on, could it be this? Could it be this? It's very much a mutual work that we do together when we're uncovering these emotions that are underneath the brownies, underneath the cookies, underneath, pieces and pieces and pieces of bread. Then when we touch on something and it resonates and that feels true for them, then the tears start. And it's really painful. It's hard. It's very hard work, but the other side is liberating and amazing.
I love that. I had a virtual client. We were doing some nutrition work even earlier this week, and waterworks started, and I held up virtually the box of Kleenexes and said, I made sure that we never ran out of Kleenexes in the nutrition office because they're used.
Yes.
That's important.
Yes.
That's important. One of my favorite books, it is my favorite book. It's called The Untethered Soul, and it talks a lot about the pain that we accumulate and the trauma that accumulates through life. And it gives this example of, a guy has a sliver in his arm, and he could take it out or he could cover it, and then, put on a bodysuit that, allows him to move around, but then he falls in love, but can't be with somebody. So they had to invent like another suit. And that's what we do as humans. We create these protections against the trauma to trap that energy in without realizing, like, go back to step one. And you could have removed that thorn and it would have been gone. It would have been painful, but it would be gone.
Super painful. Lots of bleeding.
Yep.
Lots of tears.
Yep. But you're right. Worth it.
Yeah. So worth it.
That's awesome. You wrote the book, The 1-2 Punch. I read it twice. It was great. I love the style that it was written about, and I'd love for you to talk about that. It's really easy to understand. It's simple. It's scientific, but it's colorful and fun, and we get to see you, and it's really well written, and you have a lot of really great concepts I'd love to talk to you about today.
Okay.
Tell us first about the style of writing the book.
So this is funny. I was talking to Casey about it. He said, I just love the style. So for those of you listening, I didn't set out to write it in a particular style. Huh. In fact, I asked Casey, what style is that? Because I didn't write it in a particular style, but it's very conversational. And I wanted it backed in science. So there are 87 references in the back of the book, but I wanted people to be able to be healthy without trying too hard. So I wanted it to be an easy read. It's bigger print. You can get through it in a couple of hours, depending on how fast you read. And people who know me and have met with me have said, I feel like I'm just having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
I'm just talking with you. It's a very easy read. Not big words, not scientific, definitely not a textbook.
Yep.
And that's what I wanted. It started out with handouts that I'm a visual learner, and so I'm also a visual teacher. It started out with handouts that I was giving to my clients to describe things, to demonstrate things, to show things, and then they could take those handouts home with them. And every concept I would create a handout on. And so I had all these handouts, and then I thought, it would be great to reach a larger audience and have this book as a reference for my clients. And that's how the book came to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's certain books and certain podcasts that I really love and can get into. I can do like an 8-hour Peter Attia style podcast where they go into the very depths of cholesterol, and it's mostly over my head, but I'm trying to like piece it out, and I like that, but that's not shareable. I can't give that to my clients, and so I really appreciate the resources that are more simple. I can give that to my clients.
Yes,
they understand it much easier, and they can apply it, which is what is most important.
Yeah. Anybody can start wherever they are and apply this immediately.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to hide behind the couch. So I don't get punched here. So tell me all about the 1-2 punch. Bam, bam. What is the concept?
Okay. I want you listening to think of your stomach as an incinerator. An incinerator with doors. When the doors are open, AKA when you are hungry, anything, okay, just bear with me. Anything that you put into the incinerator is going to be burned and used. As you eat, the doors slowly close. Yes, there's a lot of, scientific processes happening at the same time, but the doors slowly close. When you're full, the doors are closed. When you put food on a closed door incinerator, the food in essence is sitting on top of the closed door. And if I personify the body, your body kind of says, well, what do you want me to do with this? I can't use all this right now. The incinerator has a limited capacity. I guess I'll just store it for later. So that's analogous to eating when you're hungry. If you're eating when you're hungry, that's the best time to eat to have the optimal chance of burning. So the first section of 1-2 punch is burn. And it talks all about the incinerator. You can override the system. We as humans can. So when you eat past the point of fullness, you have much more potential for fat storage. When you eat when you're not hungry, and that's the why that I talk to my clients about. Why are you hungry?
Yep.
When you eat when you're not hungry, you have much more potential for fat storage. So that's the whole hunger, fullness. I do talk about the science, the hunger hormone ghrelin and the fullness hormone leptin, but really it's getting you to understand whether your incinerator is open and the doors are open or it's closed and there's really something else making you crave. So that's burn.
That's great. I love that. That's awesome. So let's see. So if I love that people can go look up that stuff. If you want to learn more about the hormones, there's other research. You can find more resources, but the concept is really easy to understand, and it's a great starting point. It's something that if more people just realized when they're hungry and when they're full, I think most people are just eating all the time.
Yes, exactly. And so when I describe that to people, they're like, "Oh, I get it. Now I get it." Even knowing that there are still times and reasons why someone overeats. So it's not, we talked about this in the beginning, it's not just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
Yep.
It's just like giving people 8 foods to eat. It's not that simple.
Yep. I love that. That's great.
But that's a starting point. And then, of course it matters what you put in the incinerator, and then that leads us into the second section.
Sure. That's great. And the second section
is balance. Balance your protein and carbohydrates. And that is because I think if you have a carbohydrate on an empty stomach, not I think, research shows this, that if you're doing that, it spikes your blood sugar. You get hungry much faster. You have a fall after the spike. And what you're reaching for is more carbohydrate. So that you get into this cycle of you have carbohydrate, spike, crash, reaching for more carbohydrate. And really, I talk about the value of balance. If you have just a carbohydrate, you might have had, let's throw some calories out there, 700 calories.
Yeah.
And be hungry again, even though that should be enough to keep you full, but because it was all carb, you're hungry again. Versus if you balance it with some protein and some fat and lower the amount of carbohydrate, you have had less calories that will not spike your blood sugar. It will modulate that insulin response and then keep you full longer and will lower much more slowly. But I wanted people to be able to balance without measuring, tracking, weighing, things like that. And I wanted it to be individual. So the balance, and that's where the 1-2 punch comes in. The balance is choose a fist-sized portion of protein and choose a fist-sized portion of carbohydrate.
Great.
When, on the foundation of being hungry.
Yep. That's great.
That's it.
And you talk about protein and fat specifically. You gave the visual of an anchor, and I love that. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. Always anchor. You can have an anchor without, the carbohydrate, but always anchor your carbohydrate with protein. And if you anchor it with fat as well, that's going to sustain you even more.
That's great. I love that. If we go back to burn, and you just mentioned this, the counting, the tracking, trying to get away from that stuff. I love that. And I'm fully on board. We've talked about overeating. Oftentimes overeating can come on the tail end of a dieting, as most people know what dieting is. And you explain this so well. Why is a diet, the way most people think of dieting, a very not good idea?
So the analogy that I use in the book, and your listeners, because this is audio, will have to just imagine, if you were sitting where Casey is across from me, and I said, all right, Casey, for the next 5 minutes, do not look at my earrings. Chances are high that Casey hasn't noticed my earrings.
They're lovely earrings now that I'm looking.
But you didn't notice them before.
It's true.
And now that I've said, Casey, whatever you do, try whatever methods you need to follow, whatever tricks you need to play, don't look at the earrings. And now suddenly he's so interested in the earrings, and all he wants to do is look at the earrings. And the same thing, there's a couple things going on. And then I start to talk really fast because I'm so excited about it.
We love it.
A couple things going on. So when you are following a diet, that's all you can have. And so you're interested in all the things you can't have. So back to and I use analogies a ton.
Good.
So back to the earring analogy, he's really interested in my earrings. If we put someone on a diet that says, go off all the sugar, suddenly, and I've asked clients this, and they tell me, yeah, suddenly I'm thinking of everything I can't have, and suddenly I want sugar, whereas before I started this diet of no sugar, I wasn't even thinking about it. So that's one thing that happens from the diet. So the overeating after the diet is the rebound from trying not to look at the earrings.
Great point.
The other thing that happens that people just miss, when we go on a diet, we think that we're doing something good for our body. I need to lose a little bit of weight. I'd like to get in shape. There are all kinds of reasons and benefits to going on a diet. But what we don't realize is trying to do the tracking and the measuring and the weighing and getting the certain food and the planning and all of that is increasing our stress and increasing our cortisol. So it's actually working against you. When we take that stress away, then we reduce the cortisol levels, because really high cortisol levels have been shown to give someone more potential for fat storage.
So interesting.
Yeah, that's another thing that's happening. And the third thing that I like to talk about is, even when I'm working with pro athletes, I am really trying to get into that person's metabolism. I want them to eat when their body, when their hormones are signaling that they need fuel. And if I'm superimposing a template onto their life that and onto their way of eating, that's an external template. We're not working internally with their metabolism.
Yep. Wow, that's great. I love that you mentioned metabolism, and I was fortunate enough to use a metabolic cart for a lot of years, and you over time, you could see it in the body that they were coming, like as soon as they would walk up to you, you would know. But we would confirm it with metabolic carts, and the people that did calorie restrictive diets, we would sit them down to do a resting metabolic assessment and measure their metabolism. And sure enough, their bodies would be burning hundreds, sometimes thousands of calories less than what they should have been burning based on their age, height, weight, and gender.
Yes.
And other people, after like a period of like recovering their metabolism, maybe they were eating more calories because they were trying to get over it. They may have gained some weight, but the weight gain tended to plateau, and their metabolic rates were even higher. So I don't think we ever consider the after effect of doing some of these calorie restrictive diets.
Yeah.
And that body type that walks towards you is cold, frail, moody, starving, craving, probably not sleeping well. It's really a bummer. It's not the look that they thought they would achieve by doing that.
Yes. And it's highly likely that they are very stressed with high cortisol levels because they are following so closely those calories to get what they want.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't think we talk about cortisol enough as it relates to food.
Yeah.
I think we miss that one in plain sight. Very interesting. Another thing that you do that I love this concept is make a distinction between hunger and appetite.
Oh.
And I don't know if you have come across this somewhere, you just discovered it yourself, but last year I read the book, The Science of Getting Rich by, I think it's Wallace D. Wattles or something like that. It's like 1910 that he wrote this book about accumulating wealth. And he also wrote a book about health. And just for the hell of it, I decided I'm going to listen to this, see what they thought about health in like 1910. And they got a lot of things right. It was really crazy.
Wow.
Like eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, eat according to your region. It was very interesting. And he, in that book, made the same distinction that hunger and appetite are not the same thing. Can you kind of go into that?
Yes, I can. And I have lots of examples. So the short version is hunger, physical hunger. We're talking about physical hunger, not hunger for something else. Physical hunger is the need for fuel, the need for food. Appetite is the want for food, the desire for food. And what happens is you can have hunger without having an appetite. For instance, someone, for whatever reason, maybe because they have the stomach flu, is very nauseated, just very, very nauseous. You can feel your stomach growling and needing food. You're very weak. You're dizzy when you stand up, lightheaded, that kind of thing. You can feel your need for fuel, but because you're so nauseous, you have no appetite. So the flip side of that is the absence of physical hunger. You're not physically hungry, but man, you have the appetite for the candy.
Wow. Yep.
You want the candy.
Yep.
You desire the candy. And I go into this in the book, all the external factors. I consider physical hunger to be an internal factor contributing to your need for fuel, and appetite as the want, the craving, as an external factor contributing to your wanting to eat.
Interesting. So over by our house, we have one of those soda shops that has the line of cars wrapping around the whole neighborhood, it seems like. And I was curious one day and I decided to look up on Google, like, when are these places the most popular? Because it seems like it's a few hours after meals. Sure enough, busier on Fridays than it is on Mondays. Everybody know diet starts Monday.
Yes. And I have something else about Friday. Go ahead. I'll come back to it.
And that, sure enough, the most popular times that those soda stores are busy is like 3 p.m. in the afternoon and like 7, 8 in the evening, presumably probably 2-3 hours after somebody had had a meal. And that, I think, is a great example of the difference between appetite and hunger. You probably shouldn't be hungry if you just had a meal like 2 or 3 hours ago. Why are you buying a bucket of soda for $2 and using it to chase down a sugar cookie?
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget the sugar cookies. Okay, so some of that is the afternoon slump. Some of that, when I think of 3 p.m., I first think of afternoon slump, but I think of a lot of parents carpooling kids and the stress of that. And, soda and the sugar cookies is a distraction from the stress of doing that. From the stress of the business. Like, yeah, I'm running kids here and there, and so had a bad day, and we've got all this homework, and yada, 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 all these things going on, but I can distract myself and soothe myself with the soda and the cookies, and distract the kids if I need to.
Yeah, true.
But also, coming back to the Friday thing, so many people, and again, I find human behavior fascinating. So many people mark the weekend starting or it being the weekend, time to party, time to relax with their favorite treats. So many people who are on a program of do this for 6 days and you have one cheat day, which I talk about in the book. So many people use the weekends as their cheat days. But I just had a client, I'd been working with her, super exciting. She'd lost 40 pounds by doing this, but needed a little bit of tweaking. I was curious as to why she checked back in, because she had all the tools, she had the resources, she'd read the book, she'd met with me several times, and then she was on her way. And when she checked back in, she had slipped into a rhythm and a pattern of marking the weekend, marking Friday with a treat, which is fine. It's fine to have a treat. But what she had done is, okay, that's the only time I can have a treat. So she'd done the whole earring analogy, like I can only do it then. And so was having more than she probably really needed because she didn't have permission to have it at another time.
Gotcha.
So I'm probably digressing and getting off topic.
No, but this is great. This is great. That to me sounds like 1 hour of really enjoying yourself and 167 hours of like being miserable thinking about the time that you can have that treat.
Yes, exactly.
What I'll commonly tell people is like, think of them as treats. It is a treat, and that's fine. Like, have them. When I have a pie, I eat an entire pie. I don't do it very often, and I find that like my sleep might suck. I might be really hungry the next day. My skin doesn't feel that great. I get a little puffy. Yeah. So what? Like, I will choose to do that maybe once every now and again. But I want people to feel like they can do it anytime, but then really make them count. If it's your daughter's cookies, great, have some. If they are, a sleeve of Oreos every single afternoon, probably need to address that, right?
Yeah.
How do you leverage the food that you do eat to help get people off of the food that they know they shouldn't be eating? Because I think so often we do have that deficit mindset where I tell you, don't eat all these foods, and they're looking at the earrings. What are the redeeming qualities of the good, quote unquote, good foods that help, maybe more naturally get people off of the things they know they shouldn't be eating?
So what I usually start with first is where someone is. So if they are eating foods that they, quote unquote, shouldn't be eating, they don't need me to tell them that. They already know that. So we open up the space for permission, try to decrease the shame around what they're doing. And I tell them, and some people don't believe it. Some people are shocked until they prove it to themselves. We start with, okay, let's start with what you're eating, but only have a fist-sized portion of a hot dog. Trying to think of really unhealthy things.
Sure. It's a starting point.
A fist-sized portion of a hot dog and only one cupcake. But only do that when you're hungry. And we start with that, and they start to lose weight, even eating foods that are not considered healthy. And we open up that permission, and then they start to evaluate it. And because we've given them so much permission to look at the earrings, look at them anytime you want. They're like, you know what? I'm not even sure that I want that. I'm not even sure that that sounds good. Secondly, I don't really feel good. But because they've given themselves the permission and I'm saying, don't eat this, it creates a totally different emotional space. And I'm saying, okay, well, what do you think you could include that might help you feel better? Well, I think I feel better when I don't have sugar. But they're deciding that instead of, I shouldn't have sugar, I shouldn't have sugar, I shouldn't have sugar. And then we move into a different space of, okay, now let's talk about healthy foods. But they view it totally different because it's like, I can have that stuff, but I recognize that I don't feel good. I don't really want that. I want to eat the healthy foods. And that's how we work through that.
So you're giving them a win, which makes them more anxious to get another win.
Yes.
You're building rapport along the way,
Yes.
and people are self-regulating. They're choosing things on their own without having it be, I told you to eat this, only eat this. Don't think about the earrings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of forgotten about this, but I was, I think it was the book called Why Me Want Eat by, I'm going to mess up her name, Krista Scott Dixon. She's one of the people that does precision nutrition, and helped write that textbook. And this book is like a workbook, and it's a mess, and you can tear out pages and you can draw your emotions. And, it talks a lot about all of this kind of stuff. And she says the same thing, like, don't start with the thing that sounds so stupid easy that, like, oh yeah, I could definitely do that. Like, I don't even care about, a soda in the afternoon. I care about my soda at night. I really like that one, but the soda in the afternoon, I guess it's kind of take it or leave it. Start there. Start with that, and then see what happens, and maybe you'll get another win, and then maybe you'll get 2 wins, and then maybe you'll get 4 wins, and it kind of compounds on itself. I start with my clients. When I say we, it's the client and I. We do start stupid easy. And my favorite is, oh my gosh, I had no idea I would feel that way. Sometimes I say, I just want you to try this for 24 hours. Wow.
You can do it for 24 hours, just 24 hours. I want you to eat this amount of water, not eat this amount of water, drink this amount of water.
Yep.
It ends up being life-changing. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but life-changing just from drinking water or just from sleeping.
Yep.
And that's what we start with. And back to the soda, I would argue that a lot of times the want for soda, particularly because it's liquid, is really, we're thirsty.
Yeah.
And I talk about this in the book. So often we are thirsty, not hungry.
Yep.
So I don't think I say this in the book, but a lot of people talk about, oh, if you have Chinese food, you're hungry in an hour. Well, the reason you're hungry in an hour is, I'm going to get a little gross here, is not because it moved through your digestive tract and you've pooped it all out. No, that's not the reason. It's because it's high in salt and it's high in sugar, and you are thirsty, but thinking that you're hungry after you've had this Chinese food. And I've tested it on every client that I've said, after you have Chinese food, the typical American Chinese food, try drinking water when you really want candy, when it's been 2 hours after the meal. Sure enough, works every time.
Wow, that's awesome. One of my clients lived in China, and we actually talked about this earlier this week. I asked how much orange chicken he ate in China, and turns out he didn't eat a lot of orange chicken.
Yeah, no.
Glad you made the distinction. This is American
Chinese
food.
This
is Olive Garden is not
yes, exactly.
Italian food. We just lost Olive Garden as a potential sponsor. We do that all the time. Now they're out. So is Panda Express, I guess. Bummer. You talk a little bit about habitual eating. I think that's a big thing too. Tell us a little about why, or I guess how people can start with habitual eating.
So I recommend, when we get into the why, and there's a chart on my social media channels, there's a chart within the book. It starts with the reach. When you reach for something to eat. I ask clients to start there, and anytime you reach for something to eat, even if you're physically hungry, I want you to stop the reach, stop the momentum, stop opening the fridge, stop opening the cupboard, stop opening the pantry, stop opening the desk drawer, and pause if you're in the drive-through. Roll your shoulders back just once and breathe just once. I'm not going to take you through a breathing exercise. Breathe just once and ask yourself, what's going on? Are you, and then I walk you through a series of steps you can try, together with drinking water, to see if you're really physically hungry. But that's a start to stop the momentum of eating so that you can tell if it's just habitual. Because we get into these patterns and the body learns those patterns. It has muscle memory of those patterns. And then it's just habit that you want that. And then that gets reinforced again and again and again.
I walk from the garage to the front room, past the pantry, stop at the pantry.
Yep.
Grab a handful of this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I picked up my mail at my mailbox, and, I open the fridge while I'm kind of thumbing through what are bills, what's junk, what's a personal letter.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Gotcha. How much more important is that after this pandemic, when so many more people are working from home and have a lot more access to that kind of stuff?
Yes. So much access. So that's one thing. And you and I talked about this. Access is one thing. It's always there, but also the stress, the worry, the heartache, the anxiety. So many people have gone through, perhaps the most difficult things they've ever faced during this pandemic. Illness, job loss, job security, and just basic worry about what was happening. So without even realizing it, a lot of people think that it's access. And because we have so much access, that's why we're eating. And I would argue it's not access, it's stress.
So interesting.
And the food is working. It's working as a distraction. It's working as numbing, as soothing, as grounding, as coating those emotions. And then that's getting reinforced. It's working. And so it just works again and again.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. I won't use her real name, but one of my Facebook friends very early on during the actual kind of shutdown stay-at-home order had to put a little piece of paper on her fridge that said, "Sally, you're not hungry.
Yes.
Stop eating."
Yes.
As a reminder, because it's so easy to fall into those habits.
Yes. And those are the handouts that I first started with before I created the book. The sequence that I just talked about that's in the book, it's, are you hungry? And to leave it open-ended, because are you hungry is a yes or no closed answer. It's what's going on? What are you feeling? And that's come full circle to ask that could be potentially really painful. What's going on is I'm lonely.
Yeah.
And research has, this new research just came out, it makes so much sense to me, that says hunger feels obviously emptiness, but it mimics the feeling of loneliness.
Wow. That's such a good point. And
Yeah.
when you consider that, given what just happened in the last, 13 months, that makes a lot of sense why some people are less healthy coming out of this than when they started.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the breath and breathing. And you talk about this in the book, which I love. We just released an episode with James Nestor.
I saw that.
He wrote the book Breath, and he does have some breathing techniques and things you can do, which is kind of cool. And I recommend the listener go there. Patrick McEwen wrote Oxygen Advantage. That's another good one that has some techniques. But what it is, breathing, it's a way to be mindful. And that's so critical. Again, like you said, to break yourself out of those habits. Let's talk a little about mindfulness just in general. How can you leverage food as a way to be more mindful and get started with that?
So again, there's so many angles I could come at this. One angle is permission. So not eating in a shroud of shame and secrecy, that's the cheat day. I mean, a cheat in and of itself, the name invokes shame and secrecy and deceit, right? So the first step of mindfulness is just allowance. Allow the space. And then second, I have two things in the book. One is non-distracted eating, which is so hard in today's world. And the other is paced eating. So the non-distracted eating, I call it just being with your food and only your food. If you are really hungry, really, really hungry, that's not going to be a struggle. You're going to be like, fine, give me the food. I'll just be with my food. I don't need my phone. I don't need the TV. I don't need a book. I don't need to do anything else. I'm so hungry. I just want to be with this food. But it's really hard if you're not so hungry to kind of entertain yourself while you're watching TV and looking on your phone or looking on your computer or reading a magazine or a book or something like that. So I recommend non-distracted eating as a way to be more mindful, but then also paced eating. So somebody said, you don't mean paced eating as in like eating pace. No, I mean like pace, like PACED, paced eating. So we really can, especially if we're hungry and over hungry, we can eat far more than we actually need in not even 5 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe. But it really does take about 20 minutes or longer to register, really sink into your brain that you have eaten and you're starting to get full and allow those hormones to work the way that they are designed to work. And so the paced eating is taking a bite of food, which nobody wants to do, and then set the utensil down, sit back from this food. And it's not like you're not doing anything. You're chewing.
Yep.
You're chewing.
Yep.
Wait until you fully finish chewing and swallowing that bite before you get another bite ready. And that invites mindfulness, that exercise. Usually what we're doing is we stick the bite in, and as we start chewing, we're getting the next bite ready.
Load it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bummer because the time to get to fullness, about 20 minutes, is about what an episode of Schitt's Creek is. So
I know.
I'm normally crushing episodes of Schitt's Creek all the time. So that's unfortunate. I'll have to be more mindful. Another thing I think slowing down brings is, like, we all know that we should be eating more at home and making our own food. And I think that slowing down can help you with your cooking, because cooking is a bit of an art that we've lost. I have a real tough time and a high barrier to success with a lot of people because they may want to eat healthy things, but they don't even know how to use a knife or how to even put stuff in an air fryer or make things taste good.
Yes.
And so slowing down, not only, when you're eating, getting the feedback on how does your food taste, but also applying that same mindful technique to cooking. That seems like that would be very helpful. What spices taste good? How much salt do you like?
Yes. And I usually recommend, it used to be people would get home from work very, very hungry. And then if they're too hungry, all bets are off at trying to make a reasonable, healthy meal. So one trick that I've used with a lot of clients that has been really successful is they are having a snack before they leave work. And then they get home and they're not ravenous and they can reasonably cook, take the time to cook, and then sit down and pace themselves as they're eating. Now, with so many people working from home, and I meet with clients across the country, we still sometimes, I will have them before they end their workday or as they're ending their workday, I will still ask them to have a snack so that they can take the time. They're not starving. They're not rushing. They're satisfied. They're still a little bit hungry. We're not fully satisfying their hunger, but just taking the edge off so that they can take the time to cook.
Yeah, I love that. I think I learned, I think this is, like you mentioned, like starting at a really easy, place to start. What's the easiest? What's the lowest hanging fruit? I remember, I think it was Cooked by Michael Pollan, where one of the guys he interviewed just said, you can eat anything, eat whatever, but make it yourself. Just make whatever it is at home. I don't care if it's dollars worth of pasta and ragu sauce. We just lost them as a potential sponsor. Like a very simple meal. You can learn how to do that. And then guess what? You are going to start to care about how it tastes.
Yep.
And you might say, well, this is good. I wonder if fresh pasta is better. I wonder if making this from scratch is better. But just start from wherever you are, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
That's great. You also place a really high value on simplicity. We've talked a lot about that, but why do we have the tendency to make everything way too complicated?
Well, there's a lot of stimulation that we don't necessarily think about or talk about in making something complicated. It's very exciting to start a new diet on Monday. It's very exciting to tether your emotions to all the actions of counting this many carbohydrate grams, counting this many protein grams, counting this many, fat grams, all the bells and whistles. I've got to have this, I've got to have this, I've got to have this, I've got to have this. And that complication can distract us from the emotions that are too painful and also make us feel productive.
I love that. That's great.
Lots of bells and whistles.
Yep. Just don't need it.
No one wants to hear. I don't know. I'm globalizing that term. Not very many people want to hear the simplicity of just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
That's right.
That is not exciting.
No.
It's not, bright, shiny objects.
That's right.
All over the place.
And it also, it's empowering in a sense, but it also puts the responsibility on the person.
Yeah.
You don't have any more excuses if you just eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
Yeah. I'm kind of clenching my teeth. The listeners can't see me, but yeah.
As health coaches, how much time do we spend talking about our clients, the people we work with, the energy we put out, and we want so badly for our people to succeed. And I can't do it for them. And I hate it, but they have to own it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just made me think of something that I tell clients all the time. It's the other side, that liberation that you get on the other side. Once you know, you can't unknow.
Yep.
So people that have been overeating, emotional eating, binge eating, that come to me and work with me and we go through the process, they can still overeat. They can.
Yep.
They can still binge, but now they know and it feels different.
Yep.
They can't unknow.
Yep. That's right. A trip to Bali really sucks. You get in a smelly airplane with a bunch of smelly other people. You transfer 1 million times. It takes 36 hours or something and a bus and all this crap. You get to Bali and you're in Bali and it's amazing. The journey sucked,
Yes.
But if you know what Bali is like, you might be more inclined to take the trip because you know what's on the other side.
Look at Casey. He's using all my analogies.
Did I steal that from you?
No. That wasn't my analogy, but he's using the concept of analogies because I use them all the time.
That's so funny. I had a guest on our show, and I asked him what his recommendation for something was, and he said, like word for word, something that I tell people, and I was so proud of myself. I was like, wow, that's a great answer. I say that to my clients. I was patting myself on the back. It didn't occur to me until after the interview was over. I lifted that exact phrase word for word from him years ago and completely forgot. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this. I'm curious. I have a few questions of stuff. I don't know, maybe didn't make it into the book or things that I'm curious about. Like, how do you feel about salt intake for most people?
So, most people, I will say this is a generalization, but I think a lot of people think that because of what's been fed to us through society, think that salt is a bad thing. I think salt in the presence of chronic dehydration can be damaging to your arteries, to your vessels, to your body in general. But salt in the presence of a hydrated body is awesome. Is great.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Cool. I think salt is just fine.
Gotcha.
But let's talk about your hydration.
Yeah, I love that.
And your homeostasis.
That's great. How do you ever leverage things, other tools? I know we don't love tracking, but like a continuous glucose monitor, are there any tools like that you use with your clients?
We don't, because it's an external tool that I don't want them to use, but I can see how it might be really valuable for people.
So,
to kind of play with and experiment in the space of permission. Like, I'm just really curious what breast of chicken and broccoli and a few berries does to my blood sugar versus the hot dog and the cupcake.
Yeah.
I just want to see.
Yeah. Interesting.
So
and it just occurs to me that, what you're trying to get people to do is be really intuitive and feel.
Yes.
And so that tool can be really great for some people who can't have that feel, but it's also like it's like a shortcut almost. You're skipping the process.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything on fasting? Intermittent fasting has gotten a lot bigger in the last few years. Is that a tool that you leverage with some people?
So I don't use it as a tool. However, I have so many people that I ask them what they eat and when they eat. So we start, what time do you eat after you wake up? And they'll tell me a time, and I'll say, why do you eat at that time? Well, I don't know, because it's breakfast time. Are you hungry? Actually, I have no idea. And so we have been conditioned to believe that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yep. And you need to start with that. And when I start to talk to people about, but are you hungry? Like, obviously you've been dehydrated overnight. Start with water. And then after we have solved that thirst, are you really hungry? So without even meaning to, someone ends up intermittently fasting.
Yeah.
From going to bed, eating dinner, not having a treat because they weren't physically hungry, and then going through the night and drinking water in the morning, and they're really not hungry until 9, 10, 11, it turns into intermittent fasting. On accident.
That's right.
Without even meaning to.
That.
And so when I talk to them about that and the values that are everywhere of intermittent fasting, that makes so much sense to them. And so that's the parallel I draw when I'm talking about that.
Gotcha. It's
not necessarily, I want you to do this and only eat within these hours. Yep. It's, okay, if we really got into your hunger fullness pattern, you're basically intermittently fasting.
Right. That's right. I love that. I love that you also included in the book the hunger scale. And I think a lot of people could be a lot more aware of, am I hungry, but also what degree of hunger and degree of fullness.
Yes. I sometimes tell clients this. I have a ridiculous closet. And really, really, really love clothes. I talk a little bit about this in the book. And I mean, just a ridiculous amount of clothes. And so, you can only wear so many clothes at one time on any given day. So if I pull, because I live what I teach. So if I pull a skirt out that I bought, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and it's tight, what comes to mind is not like, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight, I need to go on a diet. What comes to mind is, I wonder if I'm being really conscientious and really careful about how hungry I am. I wonder if I've kind of become really relaxed. Like, nah, I'm not really hungry, but
Sure.
I'm going to eat anyway. That's what comes to mind for me. And I could push it to, really, are you physically hungry? Because I bought that skirt at one time and it fit and it wasn't tight.
Sure.
That's why I'm
I see.
bringing up that example.
Gotcha.
And so I think, oh, okay, if I want this skirt to fit, then I could be more careful about, are you really hungry? Have you had enough water? And then stopping when I'm satisfied and not stopping when I'm full.
Yep. I love that you made it an if then. It's just a choice. It's if you want this, then you may have to tighten up a little bit. It's not what you absolutely have to do. It's not a rule.
Yeah, or I could
that.
give the skirt away and buy another one.
There you go. Exactly. Well, this has been an awesome conversation talking about your book, 1-2 Punch. Is there anything you're working on for the future?
No.
That's nice.
No, because as you might have guessed from this podcast, I'm a talker, not a writer. It was difficult for me to write the book. I wanted people to have it so that they could have like a handout packet and have all the descriptions of how to pick up the book and just do it. And I've always really wanted to write a book, but I don't consider myself really a writer. I do consider myself a talker, a connector. I do consider myself a coach. I love that, but no. is the answer to that.
That is absolutely okay. Somebody invited me to be on a podcast and it was all about like gyms and growing and growth. And I don't know how they got a hold of me. It was random, but they were asking me like, how do you want to grow your business? I'm like, we did that for so many years at a very intense corporate job. Sometimes just maintaining is good too.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love talking about the book. I love teaching the concepts. That's my true passion.
I love that.
I would not say that writing is my true passion.
I love that. What does it look like if people want to work with you? How do you work with them? And then you mentioned something earlier that I really loved. It doesn't sound like you're selling people, the 2-year package of twice a month. It sounds like you're kind of like us. Like we like to get fired by people who got good results.
Yes, exactly. So I always tell clients, my job is to be obsolete. So there are clients that I meet with and I meet with them the first time and I send them a book. So that's something that your listeners should know. In fact, you and I will set up a code that will be in the show notes.
Rad. That's great.
There will be a link. You can get a free book. You just enter the code in the show notes and just pay for shipping, which is a flat $4.
That's amazing.
And then if you want to work with me or check out more on my website, it's 1-2punchbook, all spelled out, .com. But I tell clients that my job is to be obsolete. So I might meet with them and very quickly I have them fill out intake forms. So I do my homework ahead of time and I meet with them and give them all the tools and we talk about it a little bit. And I say, you know what? I've given you everything that you need. You've either read the book and or listened to it. It's also available on Kindle. And so you're really good to go. You can take this and run with it and practice and experiment. You don't need to come back. Or you can make another visit if you want.
Sure.
And I can give you my take of whether we need to really unpack those whys, the human behavior, in my experience, what I see, and it's sad. It's a little bit sad because I become attached to the clients, but I'm really responsible in saying, you're okay.
Yeah, I love that approach.
You're good to go.
I love that approach.
You really are.
That's amazing. And then it gives people the option, if you need something, if life changes, like whatever you're eating today might not be what you need to make you feel good in 6 months or in 6 years. And so love that you have that option available.
Let's talk
for
again.
People. Yeah, that's great. I love that. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm so glad we're having it. This has been great. So much of this, I think we miss. We don't put enough importance on it. We're just throwing meal plans at people and telling them to eat it without considering all of these other factors and the emotional side of things. What would be one simple thing that you would like to tell somebody who's maybe been struggling with trying to follow a quote unquote diet and they're just not getting there? What is one simple tip or trick you could give to them that they could apply in their lives and see some benefit?
So wherever you are in the nation, in the world, right now, whatever you have had to eat today, I would recommend waiting until you feel physically hungry. If you don't know what that's like, then do an internet search. What does it feel like to feel physically hungry? And you can start that right now. If you're not sure, have 8 to 16 ounces of water. Start there. The bigger suggestion and something to try and experiment with is try it for just 24 hours. That's my suggestion.
Anything for 24 hours.
Yeah. Okay, maybe not anything. But a lot of things we can do for 24 hours.
Awesome.
Yeah. Start there. But today, wherever you are, whatever time it is, don't eat until the next time you get hungry and see what it feels like.
I love it. Journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step.
Yes.
That's awesome. I know you just mentioned this, but tell people where they can go to connect with you and find your work.
1-2 Punch Book. You have to put the book in there.com.
Awesome. Well, I managed not to get knocked out.
Woo!
I'm not out of your house yet, but
I'm compassionate. I'm intense, but I'm compassionate.
I absolutely love it. I love the energy. I love the way you're approaching things. I really love all the care and the understanding that you're bringing to the table. It's really necessary and needed, and so grateful for you and for your work and for your message. And thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh my gosh, it's been so fun chatting. You guys, we've had the best time. I hope you've had a good time listening.
It's been a great time. I'm going to try to duck out before I get knocked out. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.